it is time for a wrap up. Hi there, friends. So today I am going to do a wrap up as well as a brief thing about what I'm currently reading and a sort of TBR type thing. I'll explain when I get there. There will be timestamps below, so if you would rather skip to one of those sections, then feel free to do that. There will also be links to any reviews I mention or playlists or anything like that. So yeah, let's get started. So I do my wrap-ups based on season instead of monthly, just because I don't put out that many videos and I don't, yeah. So basically this will be a wrap-up for the spring, which is March, April, and May for me. So yeah, let's get started. Starting with March. The first book that I finished in March was The Dragon Reborn, which is book number 3 of the Wheel of Time series. I won't go into what it's about too much since it's book 3 of a series, but I also did not do a review video, but I did a text. I hesitate to call it a review. I garbled out some words on my blog, and I will have that linked below. I had some feelings, and yes, so that will be linked down below. The second book that I finished in March was A Wizard of Earthsea. This was a reread for me. Earthsea is one of my favorite series of all time. Ursula Le Guin is one of my favorite authors, so this was a joy to read. I did a review that will be linked below. Yes, you should check it out, the book and the review. But that one is about, I guess I should tell you that. It's about a sort of a typical farm boy becomes wizard. He's very proud. His pride is his downfall. He makes a lot of mistakes. I really enjoy the arc that he has in it because he makes mistakes and he learns from those mistakes, but it's a very natural arc where it goes through sort of a phase of self-loathing before really finding the humility. It's definitely a process, and you empathize a lot with him through that, and I appreciate that a lot. But yeah, that is A Wizard of Earthsea. It's also a wonderful, just like epic fantasy classic that I think everybody should read. All right, the next one that I read in March was Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I didn't do a review of this one because it's literally Neil Gaiman's just retelling of Norse mythology. I did really enjoy this one though. Basically, if you love Norse mythology and you love Neil Gaiman, then yeah, read it. There's no reason not to. If you have tried to read Norse mythology in the past, but you found it a little bit dry or struggled to understand the stories really because the language they were written in was a little bit archaic or anything like that, then I also recommend it because Neil Gaiman sort of tells it in more modern language and as more of a story, if that makes sense, than a collection. It's still a collection, but you get the feeling that it's more connected, if that makes sense. But I really enjoyed Neil Gaiman's version of the Norse myths, and I definitely recommend that one for anyone who's interested. The next one I read in March is Dodger by Sir Terry Pratchett. This is a young adult. I think he still technically classified this one as fantasy, but I would call it more historical fiction. It's about a young man who is in London back when Charles Dickens is around in that sort of era. And basically it's a situation where he finds a girl being beaten up on the street, and so he, you know, runs up to defend her. Her abusers run away, and he kind of saves her, but with the help of Charles Dickens, as well as some other people in kind of higher society. The young man is, oh goodness, I forget what they're called, is a man who goes through the sewers to try, a tosher. He's a tosher. So he goes through the sewers and tries to find treasure, basically, in the sewers. And so he's kind of from the lower class in London at the time. And it's just a very interesting sort of tale that it's very charming, it's very clever, a very feel-good sort of story. But yeah, I definitely recommend that one as well, especially if you're just kind of looking for something lighthearted and just a nice little read to kind of give you some warm fuzzies. So yeah, that's everything that I read in March. So moving on to April. April was a pretty big read month for me. It's interesting. I feel like I stress read in April. So I read A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I have a full review for this one on my channel. And this one is about parallel worlds where there is magic in other worlds, not in ours. The one, it also, in ours, it takes place back in the early 1800s. It follows two protagonists. One is a girl from our world. The other is a young man from a different world who can travel in between the worlds. And the basic plot is that an item from one of these other worlds ended up in a different world, which is a bad thing, not supposed to happen. And so they're kind of trying to get back to where it goes, and that, you know, adventure madness ensues. This book's pretty good. Honestly, it's a lot of setup. I think for the series as a whole, it's the first book of a trilogy, and I think that the biggest word for it is potential. I don't think that it's definitely not a standalone story. I would have rated it much lower if it was, but I look forward to seeing where it goes in the future. All right, so the next one that I read is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This is also a review that I have. This one is about a man named Richard Mayhew who lives in our world in London. He's a normal guy with a normal job. He has a fiance that's not very nice. I really didn't like her. But he, through circumstances, ended up sort of falling through the cracks and ended up in this other London, so to speak. It's called London Below, and it's basically this place where like runaways end up and where homeless people end up, but it also has people who have been there for generations and generations, and it's like this secret other world that is right underneath everyone's noses, that's kind of in the sewers and in the subways and on the rooftops and like just everywhere. And I really enjoyed it, mostly for, I don't know, I love the idea of secret worlds that are just like right there. Like if you just turn the right corner, then you're there. I find that really exciting. So yes, I enjoyed this one. The story was interesting. Neil Gaiman is just a good storyteller, in my opinion. I always enjoy his books. The world building was probably my favorite part. But yeah, I do recommend this one. So the next few books are all Terry Pratchett books from the Discworld series, specifically from the Tiffany Aching series. Since they're all one series, I'm only going to go into depth with the first one, and then I'll just kind of list out the others. So the first one is called The Wee Freeman, and this one is about a young girl called Tiffany Aching. Basically, her brother gets abducted by the fairies, by the Queen of the Fairies, specifically. And with the help of her new friends called the Wee Freemen, which are basically like very tiny, rowdy men in kilts that fight everything and drink everything. But with the help of them, she goes off to save her brother, armed with only a frying pan. And it's just this fun story about this 9-year-old girl who takes matters into her own hands and goes off to defeat the Queen of the Fairies, or at least to save her brother, whether, actually defeating the queen or not. And yeah, it's just very Pratchett-esque, and it's a story about a young girl who reads fairy tales and doesn't want to be the princess because the princesses are useless, and she can't be the prince because she's gonna be a witch, and that's kind of her logic. And it's a very good embodiment of what witches in Terry Pratchett's world are. And so I really enjoyed revisiting this story. I have read the Tiffany Aching series probably at least twice by now. This would have been the third time. But yes, so that's the first one of the Tiffany Aching series, The Wee Freeman. The second one is called A Hatful of Sky. This is one where Tiffany has to combat something that kind of possesses people. The next one is Wintersmith, in which we get to learn about the embodiment of the seasons and like the actual avatars of the seasons, which is a lot of fun. The next one is I Shall Wear Midnight, which is one where we get to learn about an sort of ancient entity that is sort of the gathered hatred against witchcraft, which is a fun one because it has a lot of, I think, reflection on what hate is, and a lot of real life commentary, I guess would be the best way to say that. And then the final one, which is The Shepherd's Crown, which is actually the final one in the Discworld series. So I'm just going to leave that there. And then the last book that I read in April was The Long Earth, which is a co-written book with Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter. This one is about parallel worlds. Apparently I read a lot of books about parallel worlds, but it's this idea that there are parallel worlds where humanity never evolved, and so you can they call it stepping. You can just step to the next world and it's just untouched. And yeah, that's the thing. And it's kind of like a expedition adventure sort of story, because the main characters are journeying out to see what they can see, and it's a lot of fun. It's pretty character driven because of the nature of it. And Terry Pratchett is excellent at character, in my opinion, so I found it a very enjoyable story. Definitely recommend it. If there is not a review up at the time this is posting, then there will be one soon. All right. So that is everything I read in April. In May, I had a little bit of the opposite problem. In April, I feel like I was stress reading. In May, I hit a slump. I did not read anything probably for the first 2 weeks. But in doing so, I was I enjoyed reading the Tiffany Aching series by Terry Pratchett, which is a young adult series, so much that I was like, okay, what else is going to bring me like that feeling? And I was like, well, maybe I can find something else that's kind of young adult, kind of lighthearted young adult. I know not all young adults lighthearted, but I wanted to find specifically that. And so I found The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, I believe. And I ate that up. So for those of you who don't know, The Lunar Chronicles is a sort of a sci-fi retelling of fairy tales. And I love fairy tales. These are, well, this is part of my fairy tale collection right here. I love them. Retellings are a hit or miss for me. Usually I think because they are told in short story format, and I'm not always a short story person. But I really like The Lunar Chronicles is exactly what I need when I needed it, kind of thing. So the first one is Cinder. And this one is about Cinderella. It's a retelling of Cinderella. And it's Cinderella's a cyborg in it. And in this world, cyborgs are kind of looked down upon. And yeah, it's a retelling of Cinderella. And the way that it's structured, Cinder, the main character, carries on into each of the following ones. So it's almost like with this series, you pick up a new character each time. And so it's becomes multiple perspectives. And I really enjoyed that. So the first one is Cinderella. The second one is Scarlet, which was a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. Then the third is Cress, which was a retelling of Rapunzel. And then the fourth and final one is a retelling of Snow White, and it's called Winter. And I really enjoyed this series. I definitely recommend it if you're looking for something lighthearted and just fun and easy to get through. It avoided a lot of tropes that I was either afraid of because it almost started hinting at them. It also fell into other tropes that I don't like, but I could kind of move past them because I was having so much fun with them, and it was just such a nice read. But yeah, I think I am going to do a full series review video of them because honestly, I read Cinder and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a review. And then I was suddenly like done with Cress, like out of nowhere. And I was like, okay, maybe I should just, I didn't read any of the little side stories. If you've read this series before, let me know if it's worth it. But yeah, so I read all of those in May. And then the final one that I read in May is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, I think is how her name's pronounced. Oh my goodness. I really, really, really enjoyed this one. I am excited to film the review for this one. I haven't done it yet. But this one is a fantasy story based on historical, China's history, historical China, I guess that's the way to say it. And it starts out with a girl who is a war orphan, and she's kind of going to get sold off into marriage, but she gets into this elite school and is able to get away from all this. And it's just this story, I don't know, it's just this underdog story about this girl who just tries so hard and works so hard at her successes, and she gets to this elite school, and it's a school for like military generals and strategy and that sort of thing. And her country is constantly at war, and so while she's at school, war happens. And so she kind of goes from this school setting where, you know, she's learning about all this into actual combat. And yeah, it's just a very interesting perspective, because first you see her as a war orphan and you see the consequences of war through her there, and then you see her as someone on the front lines. And I loved this book. I love the magic system. I love the world building. I really enjoyed the characters that are introduced. I am really looking forward to reading the next book in this series. So yes, moving on to what I'm currently reading. So I am currently reading the Wolf of Wessex. This is a book about a man who finds a body in the woods and is promptly accused of murdering the person. It is a dual perspective story where it's from both his perspective and from the daughter of the man who was killed. So far, I'm not very far into it. He was just accused of being killed, or of being killed, of killing. I don't know what's happening to my head today. So yes, he was just accused of killing the man. So I don't really know a whole lot of what's going to happen other than this. So yeah, I know what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that it's something really cool where the daughter goes off and like finds the real killers and is able to prove his innocence because of that. But we'll find out. The next thing that I am currently reading is The Lives of Lachlan Mora. It is the first book in the Gentleman Bastard series. It is a sort of heist, I guess, a heist story about like a ragtag group of thieves. Right now they're conmen, I guess, is the best way to put them. And yeah, I am not that far into that, but basically it's like they steal and they con people because it's their religion, which is very interesting. And so far it's kind of like a snarky sort of I wouldn't even call it a comedy, but it's snarky and a little bit dark. It's kind of hard to summarize, probably because I'm not that far in. I think I'm like 100 something pages in. But yeah, so far I'm enjoying that one all right. The next one I'm reading, I'm very much enjoying. It's To Winter Nights, which is a collection of short stories in the Dragon Age universe. For those of you who don't know, Dragon Age is a multimedia franchise. It is mostly well known for its video games, but it also has a series of novels, a series of comics, an encyclopedia of lore that one of my best friends gave me. But yes, I am slightly obsessed with it. And the To Winter Nights, the short story series, or this collection of short stories came out a couple months ago. And I tend to read short story collections. I don't read them straight through because I don't like them when I do that. So what I do is I finish a book and then I read a short story or two, and then I read another book. So I use short stories as kind of a palate cleanser. So it's taking me a while to get through them, but I am loving it so far. I am so excited to do a review for it. I'm so excited for this book. I'm always excited for more Dragon Age content though. Let's see. The next thing that I am currently reading is called Wishful Drinking. This is an autobiographical piece by Carrie Fisher. I am not very far into it right now. From my understanding, it's a situation where she had electroshock. I can't think of the appropriate name for it, but electroshock therapy is what most people know it by, I think. And she lost a lot of her memory, and so it was sort of something she wrote to reacquaint herself with herself. And so far I'm really enjoying it. She is very open about her mental health in it, about her family life and everything. I also just love Carrie Fisher. I don't know, she's always held a special place in my heart, and I am really enjoying that one. I'm listening to that one on an audiobook, and she also is the narrator, and so it's just extra amazing to me. But yes, I'm really enjoying that one. Again, that one's called Wishful Drinking. And then I am still reading The Silmarillion. I think I'm gonna finish that one pretty soon, within the next few weeks. I am loving it so much. I can't decide if I want to read it again as soon as I'm done. Don't judge me. But yeah, so that is everything that I am currently reading. And then I did so poorly on my last TBR. If you watched my last TBR, then you know how poorly I did. If you didn't, then I think I actually read one thing on my TBR, and I had 3 months to read 7 books. So this isn't necessarily a TBR for the next 3 months. This is just books I'm interested in and I'm looking forward to reading. All right, so one is The Dragon Republic, which is the second book in the Poppy War series. Like I said, I really enjoyed the Poppy War, and so I'm really excited to read the second book. The next one is, well, as I said, I'm not sure if I'm gonna want to reread The Silmarillion again, or read The Hobbit, or read The Fellowship of the Rings. I don't know. But I'm really excited about whatever I do next in Middle-earth. I might put a poll out or something whenever I get around to, whenever I finish The Silmarillion, and ask you guys, hey, what should I do? Especially if there are any Lord of the Rings fans out there who could tell me. So the next one is Shadow Rising. I think it's called Shadow Rising. I write down these notes thinking that I'm just gonna remember the actual name of things, but I never do, so I don't know why I do it. But I think it's called just Shadow Rising. The Shadow Rising, maybe? It's the next, it's book number 4 in the Wheel of Time series. So basically, there was this whole situation where the library closed, and so I wasn't able to get to the next book in the Wheel of Time series, but then the library reopened, and then I realized that they don't even have the next book in the Wheel of Time series. So even though they have 11 books by Robert Jordan, the Wheel of Time series is 14 books, and apparently they don't have the first 11. They just have random books in it. I don't understand. But that's the thing. So I just bought it. Yep. And then the next book that I'm really excited to get to is My Dark Vanessa. This is one where it is it's a fiction book, and it is about a young woman, I guess more like a girl. I believe she's in her early teens, and she is manipulated into a relationship with a teacher. And it's a situation, as far as I know, it's kind of a dual timeline where you're seeing the actual development of the relationship, and you're seeing her being manipulated into the relationship and groomed by this teacher in one timeline. And in the other timeline, you see her as an adult, and you see her realizing exactly what happened and exactly how wrong it was, because as a teenager she saw it as like this romance, this, oh, she's so mature for her age, and she's so in love and that sort of thing. But as an adult, she realizes that she was manipulated and how wrong it was and that sort of thing. And so yes, and that's My Dark Vanessa, and I'm really looking forward to reading that one. So yeah, that is that's everything. That's my wrap up for the spring, my currently reading, and my, at some point I hopefully will read these books because I can't do TBRs apparently. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to like and subscribe if you did, and like I said, everything will be linked below. I will see you around.